Mr. Bruce.
Present.
Mr. Campbell.
Present.
Mr. Claybrook.
Here.
Ms. Conrad.
Present.
Mr. Love. Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Present.
And Chair Rainey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners, who serve without remuneration. This time I'd like to swear in the staff. You may remain seated. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self you God? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Secretary, if you could give us a secretary's report, if we have one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As for the Secretary's report, I have a few announcements this afternoon. I would like to thank former board members Mary Baker and April Bostic for their service to the city of Memphis and Shelby County, and to welcome our 2 newest board members, Rebecca Conrad and Gregory Love.
Welcome.
The procedure for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda can be found at the front podium. For each case, the planner with the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, those speakers in support will have a total of 5 minutes, then those speakers in opposition will have a total of 10 minutes, and finally, the applicant will have 2 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the board. The chairman may provide additional time, provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the board will be sworn in by the chairman. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD staff member at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from the applicants since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the board will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. If the applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing, or if a board member wishes to hear additional testimony from any party, a 2/3 vote is required to reopen the public hearing pursuant to the board's rules of procedure. Please note that once the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and opposition will be allowed to provide additional testimony and/or rebuttal. All motions by this board will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing the board require the affirmative vote of at least 5 members to approve an application, regardless of the number of board members present. The board may also vote to hold an application for a period not to exceed 3 months with the consent of the applicant, or 1 month without the consent of the applicant. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, or the UDC, which was adopted by the Memphis City Council and Shelby County Board of Commissioners in August of 2010 and became effective on January 1st, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC and make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases before us today under the provisions of Chapter 9.22 of the UDC. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish the consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience, staff, or board member objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the secretary reads the case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole. We will not hold individual public hearings on those cases. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda today are eligible to be placed on consent?
I'll start by just noting that items 3 and 15 have been withdrawn. Item number 4, BOA 2024-70 at 1415 Breedlove Street as approval with conditions. Item number 5, BOA 2024-38 at 1523 Kansas Street as a hold for 1 month. Item number 7, BOA 2024-65 at 1562 Valentine Avenue as approval with conditions. Item number 8, BOA 2024-71 at 1471 East Brooks Road as approval with conditions. Item number 9, BOA 2024-72 at 3010 Huntington Trail Drive as approval with conditions. Item number 10, BOA 2024-73 at 3967 Weaver Road as approval with conditions. Item number 11, BOA 2024-75 at 1126 St. Remy Place as approval with conditions. Item number 12, BOA 2024-76 at 4177 Chanwill Place as approval with conditions. Item number 13, BOA 2024-77 at 2522 Bryan Cove as approval with conditions. And BOA 2024-78 at 309 North McLean Boulevard as a hold for 1 month. That concludes the consent agenda.
Mr. Secretary, if we could get a motion from the board to approve the consent agenda, which would be approval of item number 4 as condition, 5 as a hold, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 as conditioned by staff, and then 14 as a whole.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, we have just received 2 cards in opposition. If we could pull number 7 from consent.
7. Okay, so number 7 is removed. Board, if we can, have we consented or have we motioned yet?
Moved in second.
Moved in second. Do we provide, do
Yeah.
the movements and seconders have any problem with removing number 7?
No.
Okay.
No objection.
So ordered. Want to remind the board that by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Chairman, I haven't had.
Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Secretary, with that, we'll call the first case on the regular agenda today.
Item number 1, BOA 2024-39 at 9610 Osborne Road.
All right, and real quick, sorry, I did forget to say this. If you were here for any of those cases, basically cases that are not 1, 2, 6, 7, or 16, you've been approved, so you're free to go. Sorry about that. All right, is the applicant here for agenda item number 1? Yeah. The numbers that were approved, that was number 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay. So I don't see the applicant for number 1.
Alan or Donna Rye here? Mr. Chairman, seeing as they are not here and this case is out of holds, we will note this as dropped from the agenda.
Okay, all right, let's call our next case then.
Item number 2, BOA 2024-40 at 587 Houston Street.
Okay, I see the applicant's here. Is there any opposition to this case here today? All right. Thank you. If we can give maybe an updated staff report, if anything's changed since the last time. I guess we need a full staff report. We have 2 members that weren't here when the last time we heard it.
Okay. Hello, I'm LaTanya Hull. I am from the Division of Planning and Development, here to present case BOA 2024-0040. The applicant is Houston Street Properties LLC. The representative is Josh Whitehead of Whitehead Law. The location is 587 through 619 Houston Street, and its variances to allow a multifamily housing development in the University District overlay. On your screen is location map. It is located in the University District of the University of Memphis. The highlighted yellow section is the subject property. The zoning in the area is a mixture of CMU, Commercial Mixed Use 1, as well as RU3. The highlighted yellow boxes are the subject properties. The land use for the property is residential, and it is abutted directly to the east by institutional, which is the university. On your screen are site photos. The top photo, the left is the university, to the right is the subject property. At the lower of the screen is the subject property, and it consists of several residential lots. And this is a view of the subject property looking north down Houston Street. This is an area view of the property as well. The highlighted section is the subject property, and to the east is the university. You want me to give a little bit of history for this one? Okay. That'd be great, yeah. Okay. All right, so just to provide a little bit of history, this particular project was approved back in 2021. The applicant came back in May requesting a revision to the project site to include an additional building which was located to the north of the site where the parking lot is. So the previous site plan that was reviewed in June had a building here. We went through that case. We had opposition from the University of Memphis as well as one of the local neighborhood associations, due primarily to traffic and parking issues that would result from the building being here, which eliminated all of these parking spots and essentially caused a deficit of over 100 spots. I think it was 175 spots that were required that were not provided. The applicant indicated that because the majority of their tenants would be students, they were relying on the University of Memphis general parking lot to accommodate the parking spaces that they were deficient. The university objected to the use of their lots for this development and requested that we hold the applicant accountable to meeting the requirements of the UDC. Now with this revision, the applicant has gone back to a site plan that is more similar to what was approved in 2021. The layout is the same with one exception, and it's this highlighted area here in orange. The applicant in this version has added to this section of the building, which has increased the number of units and the number of bedrooms. In doing so, he has eliminated about 10 spots that were there previously and increased the number of parking spots that are required compared to the original version. In the originally approved version, all of the parking that was required was provided on site. As a result of this revision, we're no longer deficient 175 spots, we're deficient 54. The parking concerns as outlined, the board approved it, the site plan met all the parking requirements, the addition of additional units and bedrooms were previously approved, parking spaces were located. Per the UDC, the applicant is required to have 153 parking spaces on site. The applicant is providing 90 on-site parking spaces for which they propose to charge residents nearly $200 a month, and 9 on-street parking spaces, making a total of 99 spaces. Applicant's unmet parking need is 54 spaces. The applicant plans to market the development primarily to University of Memphis students who it anticipates will hold a parking pass for university general parking. Any non-student tenant will have to pay for on-site parking or park on nearby streets. The applicant is depending on the university, several local lots to provide the additional spaces. The parking concerns presented previously, this is a screenshot of the site plan. The site is in yellow, and the blue are local parking lots that belong to the University of Memphis. Lot 15 is an open parking lot directly across the street from the development. Lot 18 is a garage, and Lot 20 is an open space. To the right is the future plans for the university's development in that area. They have plans for developing their own housing for students, alleviating the parking that is the parking lot that's across the street from the site. And they have urged us to reject the proposal to use their sites because they don't feel that they'll have the ability to accommodate those. The university specifically cited in their opposition that they did not provide approval to the applicant to rely on their lots to facilitate the parking for the development. The university cannot provide parking spaces on its lots to accommodate the development. The university's master plan for future student housing, which would be built on Lot 15, eliminates that parking spot. Any parking remaining on Lot 15 will be specifically dedicated for students that will be housed in the university's housing. The University Neighborhood Development Corporation indicated that there is no guarantee that the amount of currently available on-campus parking will be available, that any non-student residents will have to park on already congested city streets, creating an overload of on-street parking, congestion, and illegal double parking in the neighborhood. And it will provide a hindrance of emergency vehicles from reaching their destination in a timely manner. Staff considered these issues, including the increase in the units, being a public burden for traffic. And there's no guarantee that applicants will achieve the student tenant percentages that they anticipate. Non-student tenants would be required to park on the street, causing issues. And if the applicant did achieve the student tenant expectations, it still puts a burden on the University of Memphis parking. So in conclusion, the applicant requested several variances to accommodate now a 92-unit multifamily housing development. The application requests variance to support the revision to a previously approved site plan that expands the building to accommodate an increase from 92 units to 108 units, and the number of beds will increase from 195 beds to 236 beds. The project as proposed requires variances from the University District overlay requirements related to the maximum building width, parking setbacks, building frontage, ground floor transparency, trash collection screening, length of uninterrupted fences, parking, and landscape buffer requirements. Staff agrees that the unusual characteristic or hardship caused by a draining easement justifies the variances requested in this application, with the exceptions of the variance allowing fewer parking spaces than required and allowing trash collection screening not to be constructed in the same material as the primary building. The expansion of the building to include the additional units and bedrooms has created this need for a parking variance, as it decreased the number of parking spaces previously provided while simultaneously increasing the number of spaces required from 98 to 153. The change has caused the applicant to be deficient in the number of spaces. Without these revisions, the applicant can proceed with the previously approved project, which actually meets all the parking requirements despite the easement being there. Staff received letters of concern, as I've already indicated. Staff recommends rejection of this request to allow a revision to the previously approved site plan. We recommend that the applicant be required to develop the site per the approved site plan, which meets the parking criteria. And the granting of this variance will cause substantial detriment to the public good. It will substantially impair the intent and purpose of an adopted plan or UDC, and it will be injurious to the neighborhood and general welfare and it will not be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the UDC. So the staff recommendation is rejection. However, if approved, the staff recommends the following conditions. The applicant be allowed to develop the site as previously approved under case BOA 2021-083, which has the following variances, and I won't read them, but those are the variances that were approved in that original case, and that all the other conditions related to the refuse containers, fences and walls, parking lot, fire access, low impact development, on-site drainage, and other requirements listed here be met. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Josh Whitehead, Whitehead Law, 275 Jefferson. Thank you, and as Ms. Hall pulls up the slide deck, I wanted to give this board some good news. The good news is we're essentially asking for the same list of variances that we requested and received several years ago, with one addition, but with one subtraction. The one addition, as has been discussed, is a parking variance, but the subtraction, the variance that we no longer need with our revised site plan, is a distance between trash collection and residential. I'm going to go through what I'm going to call Site Plan A, Site Plan B, and Site Plan C with these next few slides. Site Plan A was, Site Plan A was the approved plan by the board back in 2022 with the BOA case 2183. It represented 195 bedrooms and 111 parking spaces. That 111 parking space number did not require a variance. But as we mentioned, the crux of many of our practical difficulties with this site is the drainage ditch that runs north-south through the site, as we've indicated. And that the main variance we're requesting deals with frontage. I'm going to get in the conclusion of my presentation how we got this, how this property was upzoned by the city and why, and how the fulfillment of that upzoning is made more difficult through that drainage easement. Next slide. Site Plan B was the massaged version that we presented back in June. This was not the original plan. It was knocked down to and reduced to 338 bedrooms and 69 parking spaces. Again, we're highlighting in red, orange, the building, in purple, the parking, and you can see with the introduction of that northern or left building, we did have a substantial reduction in parking spaces. Next slide, Ms. Hall. And finally, this is the one that is under consideration this afternoon, 236 bedrooms with 99 parking spaces. Next slide. This table compares all three. One point I would like to make on Site Plan A, the approved site plan, it did meet the code at 111 parking spaces, but at the time, the code required 0.5 spaces per bedroom. Had the current regulation of 0.65 spaces per bedroom been in place, that would have required 127. I'd like to point out on page 19 of the staff report, staff is amenable and willing to approve and recommend approval of our original site plan, which did have 0.5 spaces per bedroom, and we'd like to receive some consideration of the same ratio for ours. Next slide. So if we were to meet the current higher parking space ratio, we would be required, as Ms. Hull indicated, 153 spaces, but under the 0.5 ratio, we would only be required to have 118. I'm going to ask Mr. Channing to the podium in a moment, but he'll explain how his many conversations with the university has culminated into their willingness and recognition that a variance to the parking regulations is warranted based upon that drainage easement, and they are willing to go up to 20 spaces. So if we take the 118 and reduce it by 20, we have 98 spaces. We're asking for 99. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Mr. Channing, my client and the developer for this project.
Yes, Zach Channing, 18301 Long Lake Drive, Boca Raton, Florida. Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. Yes? Yes. Do you have the emails? Thank you. So I just want to give a little bit of a backstory. Again, I know we talked about it 2 months ago, but we have also 2 members, which welcome. So I didn't just come up with this plan out of the blue and say, hey, I'm going to take out all my parking and park at the university. I wouldn't dare to do that, because I knew if the university came out against it, it would be a big waste of money and time for me. So I did meet with the university many times, and I met with the then sitting CFO of the university, Greg Tobias, which in a letter that I think just got passed out, gave me a letter of support for me to have a parking variance. And the reason that we agreed with that was the location of my site was very strategic, where there's thousands of parking spaces, a brand new parking garage, and 2 parking lots with thousands of spaces that are for general parking. General parking, anyone who is a student at the University of Memphis and pays tuition gets in their tuition at general parking space where they could park at these lots 24 hours. So the university and I have been working on this plan for years because they need more housing. So I came to them with this plan. They agreed. They thought it was a good idea. I got a letter of support. I went ahead, made my plans. A few months later came up, and then that then sitting CFO ended up leaving, and a new CFO came in who I never met and wasn't aware that my plan and his letter was passed on. So we ended up getting a letter in the next staff report when we came up 2 months ago that they don't support this plan. So we had our meeting, and we ended up pushing it. In the meantime, in the last 2 months, I've met with the university, and I said, is there some place we can meet in the middle, something closer to my original plan? And this is what I came up with, which is very close. I mean, we've added 10 more units and only got rid of 10 spaces. Now, you'll see in a letter, an updated letter from Tony Petit, who was here last time and spoke, and he's not here today. What he said was, unless this project has special condition that prohibits conformance, our position remains that the overlay requirements should be met. Specifically for this project, there is an on-site drainage ditch that inhabits the developer from constructing a very limited amount of parking spaces. So I want to take that letter and focus on what I have on my hardship, which is the drain ditch. If that drain ditch was not here, I would have more land and I would be able to build more parking spaces, and I would have the adequate parking spaces for those beds. So I just wanted to point that out. And as far as the new parking requirement of 0.65, that's now, which is new, 0.65 spaces, from my experience in building apartments and planning apartments around this country, is very unrealistic in infill sites and in the city. 0.65 is what you do for garden-style 2- and 3-story apartments walk-ups on 10 to 15 acres. So there will never be another apartment complex around the university, a new one at 0.65, unless you build a parking garage. And you can't build a parking garage because the numbers won't work. So I'm just pointing that out, that the 0.65 is really not a realistic number to see future growth.
Madam Vice, Mr. Chairman, I feel like we're getting close to our 12-minute mark. Okay, thank you. Next slide, Ms. Hull. Actually, two more slides. One more. Mr. Chairman, the regulation to increase the parking ratio from 0, for many years, the university overlay had no parking requirements, up to 0.5, and then eventually up to 0.65, was based largely on the buildings highlighted here as Building E, that's the 9, formerly known as the standard, and Building C, which is the Yugo, formerly known as the Gather. The Yugo has 0.38 spaces per bedroom. The standard, or the 9, has 0.28. Our project will have 0.42 spaces. Although most of our tenants, if not all of our tenants, will be University of Memphis students, we don't think we'll need any additional parking, whether it's surface or garage, across the street for our tenants, because we feel like we're going to be much more like the Yugo, property C, at 0.48 spaces per bedroom than E, the 9. Next slide. But that notwithstanding, we are across the street, we're highlighted in blue, we are across the street from a huge surface parking lot that may or may not go away in the ensuing decades, but the parking garage that's to our northeast will not. Next slide. Here's an aerial of that. Next slide. Very briefly, the upzoning that occurred here about 15 years ago was based upon a university funded plan that encouraged high-density housing adjacent to the university. Next slide. That manifested in itself in an upzoning from what used to be single-family. Our street, our houses were built under the old zoning, single-family zoning. Next slide, to commercial. Not only that, the height was raised to 5 stories. That's on your left, and on the right, an urban frontage was instituted along Houston. Next slide. So I'm about to pass out 2 pieces of paper. The first is strikingly similar to a piece of paper you saw last month because it's basically the same thing. And the second piece of paper Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll probably not need that 2 minutes, but I did want to underscore what Mr. Channing said, that he has been in communications with the university and the University Neighborhood District Council for the past 60 days to address some of their concerns. Ms. Hull correctly identified those concerns, but they were from, I guess at this point, 90 days ago, before our revisions and before our latest communications with them. I passed out both our request, that's the letter, front and back, with my letterhead, but I wanted the board to also see the notice of disposition from a couple years ago, because what we're asking, with the exception of the parking variance, is essentially what we were approved for last time in 2021. Again, with the exception of that dumpster distance between single family and our trash collection area. And I don't have to read these out to you, Mr. Chairman, but we would appreciate your consideration of these amendments. The amendments are in bold underline. We would add F1F that would allow for our parking variance, as well as the 2 parking spots that are within the front primary street. Those are on the far northern edge of our site, adjacent to Houston Street. They are set back 5 feet and not the 15 feet. as well as the uninterrupted fencing, which was approved a few years ago, and the wood privacy fencing around the trash collection, that's H, that again was approved 2 years ago. Number 3 allows us to have cedar or pressure-treated pine. Again, that goes back to our earlier approval. And finally, Mr. Chairman, number 11, I don't think you probably are too eager to see this project again. We don't want to present to you again either. So we would appreciate a 4-year allowance to get our building permit versus the 2-year allowance that is provided in your rules of procedure. We believe that will give us adequate time to re-engage with the investment community so we can get financing and get this thing constructed. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm available for any questions.
Got a copy of this. I'll start with things like the cedar thing, is there a problem with those?
Chairman, if I may, I want to clarify just one point the applicant made.
Sure.
He mentioned that my conditions and my recommendation were based on objection from the opposition 90 days ago. I've communicated with the opposition this week, and my comments and recommendations are based on those conversations. Although the opposition acknowledges that there is a drainage ditch that reduces the developable site area, they indicated specifically that they felt maybe 10 or 20 spaces would be accounted for that characteristic on site. However, they did not agree to us offering relief to the 0.65 requirement for spacing on site. They want us to hold that requirement strong, which would mean that the applicant, if we did that, the applicant would still be deficient 54 spaces and be required to use university parking for that. And they also indicated the concern that in approving this, aside from using university parking, they wanted to reiterate the fact that if the tenant ratio, student versus non-student, were not met, if we had more non-student tenants than anticipated, the traffic, the double parking, all of those issues related to that would still be a burden for them. So I just wanted to clarify that that was not 90 days ago, that was this week. In terms of the requested amendment, I just got these today, so we really haven't taken a good look at it. But so essentially what the applicant is asking is for us to approve what he's presenting now. So a minimum of 90 on-site parking spaces is what he's asking for. I believe that the applicant should be held to the 0.65 space requirement as the UDC requires. We went through a zoning text amendment process that justified that increase, and I believe that the applicant should be held to that because of the issues that are present in that area. And so for that reason, I would not agree to the 90 on-site parking spaces. I ask that they be held to what's required by the UDC. The uninterrupted fencing is something that we're in agreement with. It was approved previously. The trash enclosure screened by wood privacy fence, the UDC requires that trash collection enclosures be made of the same material as the primary structure. And we would like to try to move away from these wooden enclosures because of the fact that they deteriorate over time. And so we want to make sure that there's quality material being offered for these enclosures so they can last, especially since this is abutting a residential area. We want to make sure they look nice and they're going to last a while. So I would not agree to that as well. I'm going to defer to the zoning administrator on some of these other issues.
Mr. Chairman, I feel like, may I make a request? Can we be responsive to some of those comments since they were borderline subjective?
I would love to get their thoughts on this first.
Okay.
Yeah.
not, is this up? Here we go. I'm the secretary, not the zoning administrator, but I can respond. Number 3, I'm assuming this is mainly related to the rear buffer. And I think it's because the distance, if I recall, is they were requesting only 4 feet, which would require either brick or decorative block type fence. So I'm assuming the cedar or pressure treated pine is for that part, if I had to guess. But Mr. Whitehead will respond to let us know if that's what that is for. And if y'all are okay with it, well, we'll just defer to y'all. The code would have required the decorative block or brick stone. That one's just the P.
I think the other one is the 4-year.
Yeah, the number 11.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why we would change it from the 4 years, just because 2 is our standard, and if you haven't begun construction by then, can we know why? But if you do approve it, I would think it would be simple for them to come back and re-ask for a time extension.
And I did have one thing to add to that, which is really in line with some of our conversation right now. There are code updates that we have from time to time, and we're in an instance where there is a code update that is significant to this project that we feel needs to be adhered to. And so if you go 4 years, there's potential we have other issues that come up that we make revisions. So I think we would defer to you, but our position would be we prefer not to do that.
Very good. Aaron?
I'm seeing the 4-foot items D and E. We didn't really talk about those. Are those insignificant that you're fine with those changes, or were those, it looks like you all had 5 feet and he's asking for the 4 foot.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
So really, y'all would push back on
The 90.
parking, trash enclosure, and 4 years would be like, of these changes.
Probably number 3, depending on what that buffer is, because I think, so the UDC for the class 3 buffers, normally, I think if it's 7 feet or less is what's requiring the brick or stone. So if we go down to 4, well, that's even closer, or that's even less of a buffer to then allow them to do wood, which would normally be prohibited.
Behind it, is there another ditch? It's a ditch.
That's a drainage ditch.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of staff while talking about that?
All right, Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go backwards of 11 through 1, and then I'm going to hand the floor over to Mr. Channing before I get to the beginning. On the number 11, our request related to 4 years, the testimony from Mr. Ragsdale even strengthens our request for 4 years, that we have a vested right in this site plan, and that the code doesn't change in the middle of us trying to get this financed. That notwithstanding, I think Tennessee law, there's a Vested Property Rights Act that allows a certain amount of time with an approved site plan. So that might come into play as well. On number 3, the cedar or pressure-treated pine fence, a class 3 buffer is only required where multifamily abuts single family. Many of our properties at the bottom of this map, but to the west of our site, are multifamily. So the 15-foot, 7 to 15-foot buffer with a masonry wall would actually only apply to sections of our western frontage and not the entire frontage. And Mr. Channing would like to speak to the other items.
As far as the other items and the dumpster enclosure, I actually came to staff, to the board maybe 3 years ago, and just for the dumpster enclosure to change the material, and it got approved. I don't know if you have that case, but we did change it, and that's all due to cost. It's never been harder than it is today to build a project, and this is a very small project. An average student housing project has 500 beds, so I need to save costs anywhere I can. The dumpster's in the back of the property, it's not facing the street, so to change that to a more affordable material, it helps. I'm happy to do CMU if that's something that you guys want to press on, but this is something that I came forward to and it got approved a little while back. And I guess my final case with the parking is that the university and Tony Petit, he was here last time, and he said that they are supportive of this project, of having a student housing project here. They need student housing, and they're supportive of the project that was originally approved, which is at 0.5 spaces per bed. And I believe staff is saying that they're supportive of the original, of the original site plan as well. So I'm just going back to the 0.5 spaces per bed. If the drainage ditch was not there, we would have the ratio for 0.5 with this new plan. This plan is very, very similar to the other plan that it seems like everyone is supportive of. And that's all. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant? Okay. All right, very good. Approve BOA 2024-40 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
Second.
All right, move to second. Thoughts, offhand, before we or any place y'all want to start?
Well, let me just make sure I'm clear. So the number of parking spaces that they can get without coming to us is 98. Was it 99? 99. Okay. And with this plan, they need 152. Are those the numbers?
They need 50 more spaces on site, 54.
Based on 0.65.
Right. Okay, gotcha. 54 above what's what they have a right to get.
Yes.
Right, gotcha. Okay, I just want to get clear on that.
Ask questions to staff in session or
I think
only?
you can.
Okay. Staff question. I know they mentioned that it was approved at 0.5 originally, and now we're holding to the 0.65. Is that because of just a different time, different day, and different ask, or was there 0.5 that was permitted back then based on some other?
Based on my understanding, and I was not here at the time.
Okay.
But based on my understanding, there was tremendous issues related to parking and traffic in that area. So one of the opposition, the University Neighborhood Organization, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, really spearheaded an initiative to change the zoning code so that we could increase the requirement for parking for these developments to alleviate or reduce some of the traffic and parking issues that were existent then, and those still exist now. Those issues, according to the opposition, still exist now. So that's why they are so adamant about holding to that 0.65 because of the previous issues they've had related to these developments, not providing enough parking and causing the issues.
And when, I know we've talked about this, but I'm trying to make sure I'm clear on the facts. When was the requirement increased from 0.5 to 0.65? It was it before?
I think it went to 0.65 in 2018. I did look that up.
Also, it was before their initial plan was submitted.
Was it after?
Yeah, it was after.
It was after,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. So it was
I
a
see.
point, it went from 0 to 0.5 before, and then it went to 0.65 after the
After.
original.
Right, okay, gotcha. So,
I think maybe we should start with just talking about parking.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to talk about a lot else if we, so thoughts on being the 53 space?
I mean, I think it's a real concern, you know, if you're going to be reliant on university parking spaces or university-provided public spaces, and I think it's a real concern, particularly because because you don't know what the ratio is going to be of U of M tenants versus non-U of M tenants. I mean, the reality is it's not going to happen, but the reality is this whole thing could be non-U of M tenants if, for whatever reason, they want it to be. So I think it is a real concern, and I don't know we should venture too much from that being a true issue. Now, what I was thinking, I don't even know the legalities of it, but if there was a way that some of the multifamily could be subsidized to only U of M, that way you're guaranteed to have a certain percentage of U of M students doing it. Then you have some kind of reliable metric, but I doubt that he would want to do something like that. But.
Secretary, but a restriction that like so much of the apartments have to be leased to students, put a percentage on there.
I don't know how we would enforce that. And to clarify, we did just confirm it was in 2023, April and March, when the
Increase.
0.05 was increased to 0.65. Yes.
Really just don't know. I mean, I can't imagine it being all non-students living there.
He'll still not work.
It's green.
Not like he want to work.
You want to grab another mic? Maybe that's why it was unplugged. Sorry.
Like it's the port.
It sure clicks when it goes in. So.
You're free to use this.
I'll talk really loud. Sure. Yeah. Okay. I can't remember what I was saying now.
Trying to guarantee parking for students.
Yeah, you can't guarantee it, but I also can't see a lot of non-students wanting to live right on campus like that. I know I wouldn't be wanting to move right on campus if I wasn't a student. But at the same time, I might stay there if I was a student and I graduated. So.
Yeah, you're not, 22 years old though.
Yeah, I'm not.
The only reason I would even be kind of online with reducing it back to a 0.5 is simply only because it happened mid-project planning. And, I just know in this process, these project planning takes years to come to fruition. That's just the nature of, the stakeholders and funding. And who knows, even if this happens 3 years from now, there could be another change that would affect it again. So that would be the only reason that I wouldn't be fully opposed to remaining at the 0.5 is just because it was something that happened during the process.
Yeah, so, and I agree, that's kind of my thinking. So I guess two questions that relate to that. One is, we approved a variation a couple of years ago. Why, and I just want, why won't that plan work? It's already been approved. And they said, I just want to make sure, I just want to understand that. And then second, how real is the impact on the university? The university says that it will need those spaces for its plans, and how real is that impact? So those are the two questions that relate to that.
I mean, my opinion on the second question is that parking garage is not going anywhere. the grade parking across the street may become something in the next 2 to 20 years, but that parking garage is going to be there. I wouldn't think they're tearing that down anytime soon. So if you have students, if I'm a student, I'm probably not paying $200. I'm going to use my free parking that's catty cornered to it, unless I just have a free, I know I didn't have a lot of $200 a month extra when I was in school.
Right.
So I don't know that worries me very much. The first question, I don't know, other than everything got more expensive. Interest rates, money is harder to come than it was 4 years ago or 2 years ago with the projects I know people working on. But I don't know, we'd have to open that up and open the hearing back up to get a exact answer on that.
I mean, it is a good question because it looks like the project expanded, and it could just be, like you said, to make the pro forma work, you had to get more units to make it worth the investment.
And part of what they talked about last time, didn't mean to cut you off, was they're going with smaller units, more smaller units. Remember, it's harder to find those four bedroom units like you think of in college. People don't want to live with 4 people as much as they used to. That was one of the reasons why the whole thing changed our last meeting on it. So I don't want to vote on that, but you all still want to talk about parking, or do you want to talk about other things?
I think the parking is the biggest one. I mean, just when I look at what they're asking for, I mean, the 4-year comeback, I mean, that's something that's either you agree with it or you don't.
We could split the baby at
3 years or something like that, or make them come back in 2 years with the provision that, the understanding that this project was already in process. But I think the parking is really if we hold our hat on the dumpster enclosure, it sounds like he said he'll be amenable to doing it in what it needs to be done in. So I think the parking is really just, if you don't pick out the parking, nothing else really matters, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So any more discussion on parking?
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
The 54, the deficit of 54, is that based on the 0.5 or the 0.65?
6.5.
That's based on 0.65?
Yes.
So based on 0.5, what would the deficit
I
be?
believe he said 0.48. It still would need a slight bit, but
Okay.
it's pretty close. Pretty close. I don't know the deficit, but they're at 0.48. Yeah. Any other thoughts on the parking? None. I would propose that let's take a look at the amended conditions that are actually shown on the screen. I would be okay with number 11 being 3 years. Is there any objection to changing okay, I'm going to mark that. We'll come back. Sounds like, at least from what Aaron said, he would prefer the trash enclosure to.
I don't know what the cost of that is as it
Yeah.
relates, but I think that's something that in the overall scheme of a big development, if that's a rule that they want to hold to, I'm fine with keeping it as is.
Gotcha. Okay. So you would strike H from those. Any other pieces of this that people want to talk about? Okay. All right, so I would suggest to our people that moved and seconded that we say as conditioned by the conditions up on the screen there as far as our vote is concerned, with the deletion of H and with 4 years turning to 3 years in number 11. Is there any objection to that? Okay, any other discussion before we vote? All right, I think,
Mr. Chairman, did we also need to change number 2, because part of it was crossed out, related to the refuse container?
Refuse containers should. What is that one actually saying? Is that basically kind of reiterating the,
I believe it was crossed out so that it no longer conflicted with H.
okay, but.
I agree with that. Yeah, is there any objection to undeleting that portion of number 2? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Campbell,
Just to be sure, we're voting on basically everything except what we, okay. Minimum
We would
90.
approve the parking.
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Mr. Love,
Aye.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden,
I'll abstain.
and Chair Randy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, could you call our next case for today?
What did we decide about the parking?
Item number 6, BOA 2024-45 at 1550 Riverside Boulevard.
I think that deletes it down.
All right.
These are good.
Present for this?
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a class reunion here with Mr. Bacchus and Mr. Love and Mr. Whitehead. All right, is there any opposition for case number 6? Okay. All right, Ms. Hull, whenever you're ready, if you want to give us a staff report.
Latanya Ho, DPD, presenting case BOA 2024-0045. The applicant is Myron Tate. The representative is Brian Backus of the Bud Group. The location is 1550 Riverside Boulevard, and there are variances to allow a metal street-facing garage closer than 5 feet to and in front of the principal structure. The location is on your screen. The vicinity map as well. The property, subject property is highlighted in yellow. 74 notices were mailed to the general public. The zoning map, and land use map are in front of you. The subject property is completely surrounded by residential 6 uses, with the exception of the highway to the west. Here are site photos. The first photo is looking northeastwards toward the subject garage in gray here. As you can see, it projects in front of the principal structure. The one to the right is another view of that garage and the front of the house. This one is a front-facing view of the garage, and the one to the right shows the space between the garage and the principal structure, which is not in compliance with the UDC. This is an area view of the subject property. This is the primary house, and this is the garage in question. And this is a site plan that was provided by the applicant. So this slide looks at viable garage options. Just as an overview, the UDC does not allow metal garages in residential areas. So the garage itself being a metal garage is in violation. In addition to that, the fact that the garage protrudes in front of the building, that it's not attached to the principal structure, which is it requires 5 feet between the principal structure and the garage. In this case, we have 1.3 feet. And then it encroaches to the east onto the 1.3 feet into the side setback as well. So with this situation, the applicant received a enforcement citation from zoning enforcement because of these conditions. And the applicant did not get the appropriate permits to build this garage. There are other viable garage options that the applicant could have built that are within the UDC and would have alleviated the need for these variances. So had he come and gotten a permit, he would have been presented with other options. And those include a single car attached garage and a single car detached garage, which is actually the norm in this neighborhood. These neighborhoods have really smaller lots, and so most people have a single car detached garage in the rear of their property. So those two would have been an option. A 2-car semi-flush garage, which is indicated here in yellow, which would be set 3 to 10 feet behind the front wall. If the applicant had opted for a smaller garage, because this is an oversized garage, it's 25 by 24 feet. Standard garages, according to sources online, is 20 to 24 feet. So had he opted for a slightly smaller garage, this could have been attached and sit back as required and would not have required any variances. And it could have had a 2-car setback garage as well. So there were other options for a garage other than this metal building. In conclusion, the applicant is requesting variances from several sections of the UDC to allow a metal street-facing garage closer than 5 feet to and in front of the principal structure. The application was filed in response to a citation received by the applicant from the City of Memphis zoning enforcement. The applicant constructed a metal garage without filing the appropriate permits. He was cited for constructing this garage in R6 district, which is not allowed, for building in the setback, and for the structure not being 5 feet from the principal structure as well. The applicant was found in violation and the case is in pre-court investigation status. Staff believes that the applicant's failure to obtain a proper permit for the garage construction created the issues necessitating these variances. If proper protocols were followed, the applicant would have been given several viable options for building a garage that meet UDC requirements. Staff received 2 letters of opposition requesting that the applicant be required to remove the metal garage. Residents believe it's too large, protrudes in front of the housing, and is not in character with the rest of the neighborhood where single detached one-car garages in the rear are the norm. And we got 2 letters of opposition in time to be included in the report, but we got several after and many calls asking for this to be opposed. Staff recommends rejecting of this request because a metal garage is not allowed in the R6 district, is inappropriate for and incompatible with this residential district, and the space between the garage and the house poses a potential safety hazard. The fact that there's only a foot, 16, 17 inches between the primary house and the garage causes a safety hazard, in my opinion, for children that could possibly get stuck in that space, animals that could get stuck in that space. So because of that, staff believes that there is no hardship or practical difficulty presented by the applicant that justifies approving these variances, and that approval will have a substantial or undue adverse effect on adjacent properties and the character of the neighborhood. Staff recommends rejection. However, if approved, staff recommends the following condition. The garage must be attached to the principal structure, and the garage must be clad to match the architectural style of the principal structure. That concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions for Ms. Hull? I have a quick question. Going back to the side setback, tell me about that just real quick again. Where is it and what should it have been?
It should be 5 feet from the property line, and it encroaches 1.3 feet into the side setback.
Gotcha. Okay. But if approved with those conditions, we'd basically be saying you can be over 1.3 over that, 1 point,
Yes.
over the other, but you got to make it look, attach it to the house, make it look like the house.
Yes.
Yeah, or I guess wood would be fine.
Yeah.
Is that
So
correct?
we're not going to require him to move it. I'm not recommending require it to be moved, but I do think the safety hazard of attaching it, that needs to be closed. So attaching it and at least cladding it so it looks like the rest of the house.
Right, because it's well behind the front setback, but a garage typically cannot protrude in front of the.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And what was the reason for the garage? Was there a siding that made them add a garage, or they just wanted?
There was an enforcement case because they built the garage and it wasn't required. I mean, it wasn't allowed, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Mr. Bacchus, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, if you'll give your name and address for the record.
Brian Bacchus with the Bacchus Urban Design Group, 5320 White Diamond Street, Memphis 38109.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good afternoon to you. Ms. Hull is absolutely correct in her findings. However, I have to disagree with a portion of that. But before I do that, I want to introduce Mr. Myron Tate here, who is the applicant, and he's living in the home. This is his home, so I want to introduce you to him to kind of give you an idea and a little background on why we're here.
Okay. Mr. Tate, if you'll come up and say your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
My name is Myron Tate. I'm at 1550 Riverside Boulevard, 38109.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Tate.
Okay, a little bit about the house. I bought this house 2 years ago. I moved in it last year. I put a new roof, new foundation, new windows, new plumbing, electric, the whole nine, new tubs, sinks, cabinets, vanities. I put a lot of money into this house. I cut maybe $10,000 worth of trees out of the front yard. And it's a hectic project, but I love the house and I love the community and I want to stay there. I have future plans to put a wood fence around it and make it nicer and do some landscaping and anything that you all need me to do, I'm willing to do because I love the community. I love living over there.
Okay, but could you clad that garage so it's not metal on the outside, put wood or brick on it?
I can do it, yes, sir.
Okay.
On the east side and the north side, where the facings, and on the sides, so that it could be just blend or the whole building.
What would the staff want on that? Like everything visible or the whole building or?
Everything visible. I mean, the one side, once it's closed in, it won't be visible. So the three sides open.
You would basically close in the gap, between the two somehow.
Yeah, I put a fence. I'm trying to put a fence, a wood fence right there.
I think you'd have to it would need to be more permanent looking than that, an actual wall between the two that touches the cladding. Okay. So you wouldn't have to do, so that side that's kind of next to the house, that nobody cares because it'll be behind that, a real looking wall that looks like the house. You'd probably take the brick over to it or wood to the other. But then you'd be able to keep the building where it is. And the roof is okay, because you can have a metal roof, or would he need to re-roof it?
Like you got to find a way to make that roof tie into the. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's still don't. I mean, it's the architect. I mean, talking out loud, but you're still gonna have to find a way to make that roof look like it's part of the primary structure.
Like pull it in, just for drainage issues.
I mean, because you need some, maybe have like a dormer that ties into it or continues to the, I don't know, I digress. But
yeah,
I think you get what I'm saying? Like, even if you clad it, I think if the roof is still
like
gonna
some
look
sort of like
this,
cricket or something in there.
something to tie it back to the house.
Okay. But yeah, sorry, we got ahead of ourselves. Any other questions? I asked him a question, but Carson?
Is it on a slab right now? Did you have a slab poured or what?
No, it's the current slab that's already there.
Okay. I'm just thinking, it juts out so much and you can see the gap. I didn't know if pushing it back would allow it to, again, you still have to conform it to the house, but be easier for that because the way the roof lines and everything. It looks like there's, from one of these site plans, it looks like there's a slab in the backyard right behind it, concrete. So I don't know if you could go back with it.
Is it possible to move it, or is it tearing it down to move it?
It's patio area space behind it, and that's what I was planning on using that space for. It's on a slab of concrete, and it actually have like a flower box on both sides.
When you said some concrete, is it concrete of a previous structure, or is it just the concrete of the sidewalk? The driveway that's continued.
It's been there.
Okay, so was it a building there at some point that was gone?
No, not that I know of.
It was probably just.
I only been on it 2 years.
That was a carport
It was a carport there.
there previously.
Okay, that would make
sense.
sense.
That little piece that touches it now, that was a garage that probably would have been a side load.
Okay, that's
based on this site.
That was the garage there, a side.
Okay,
Right.
so that was their turning area.
So that was how they got into it and hooked in. Okay.
So there was an issue with the garage protruding out further than the house. I guess we're okay with that.
The option is move it, to try to, reduce the number of variances, or just let him leave it there and address the issues, which seem to be primarily the metal face, the visible. We did have a couple of people opposed to it being up front, but, it's like.
Any other questions for Mr. Tate? Do you have anything you want to add, Mr. Tate? I may have cut you off when you were talking to us.
No, that's it.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Bacchus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to try to be clear. If Ms. Hall, do you have the photos that I sent to you showing the front, side, rear? But I just want to kind of reiterate that, keep in mind, this is a corner lot. It has one front yard, one side yard, one street side yard, and one rear yard. The rear yard is to the east. So, and you're absolutely correct, Mr. Rainey, that the structure, or the detached accessory structure, doesn't encroach into that rear yard by about 1 feet, approximately. So I just want to kind of show you where we are, and that's going to take you out to the site. Now that's looking east along the Waldorf side, and that's looking north along the Riverside property. That's the front yard. So, and that's the side yard looking east. And the other view is a front-facing garage looking from the street side yard. So, given that, the garage itself is actually a side-loaded garage. But the only problem is that it faces the street.
Right.
So, in essence, by all practical purposes, this is a side-loaded garage when you're looking at it from Riverside. The the rear yard, you cannot utilize it as a side-loaded garage at that point because you don't have enough space to turn. Sure. However, the original garage was a side-loaded garage, had 2 double doors, but Mr. Tate has converted that space to a fitness room, to his own private fitness room. And he does not want to, remove the structure. There is access between that fitness area and the garage. There's a door. There's a garage door, and there's also a man door that leads directly into the garage. 2 man doors that lead directly to it, so you can access it. However, we have been discussing how to clad that portion of the garage space between the 2 buildings. And we also talked this morning about cladding the east property, the east side of the building, and also the south side of the building where the doors are. And what we had thought about is just removing the siding, placing 4x8 plywood, and putting in horizontal siding along those on the south side and on the east side of the building only. And also where the area protrudes beyond the front of the single-family home, we can clad that as well. That's probably about 5 feet at the most. And to alleviate any issues regarding the space between the two structures, I haven't discussed that with Mr. Tate, but I suggest that he provide a gutter and a downspout at that area, so it will alleviate the rain from coming in. And also along the gable at the front, I believe there's an opportunity to provide some type of wood fascia board at that location to make it look like the structure itself. So there's opportunities here to make it as close as possible. The only problem we have is the front, is it protruding beyond the front yard. And Mr. Tate wants to utilize his rear yard, only the space behind the garage, he wants to utilize that area for backyard space. It's a patio area, it's very small, and there is a grade change. Now, there is a topographical issue between the adjacent property owner and that patio area. So there is a topographical topo issue with the practical difficulty here. If he pushed that garage back any further, I don't think, if he had done that, it would have been within that. He could meet the setback, however, it would take away his outdoor space. So we're trying to create an outdoor space as well as provide adequate parking. As you viewed some of the photos, his front yard, he doesn't have enough parking, but he has 2 parking spaces in the garage, and if he's allowed to keep the garage, he'll have also 2 spaces in front of the garage. So he will meet the minimum requirement for required parking spaces. So, and also he's willing to put in a site-proof fence along the east property line to kind of soften the view on that side. And he's also going to enclose his rear yard with the same type of fence. So that's where we are, and that's about the status of where we are today. And I'd be willing to offer those as conditions of the plan.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
I'm still not clear how you're going to connect the garage to the house without creating some kind of makeshift thing that's going to create drainage problems and, I don't know, place for varmints to live or whatever. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to do unless you extend the gable of the main structure and tie it into the roof of the metal garage. I don't see any other way of doing it.
What he was suggesting is not attaching it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said.
I don't think not attaching it is a viable solution.
Okay. Noted, yeah.
And if it could shift back some, I mean, I'm looking at the overhead. It looks like it's like right overlapping on the front, but coming on the back side of it, it's barely missing it. Like, I feel like it almost can shift back a couple of feet to be centralized on that roof, which will make that connection, a little bit cleaner. But I do agree. I think that roof on the primary structure needs to extend and tie into that, tie into the ridge of the garage, and then clad it.
Right. And you're still taking 2 different materials. So you're taking, an asphalt shingle roof into a metal garage roof, which is a challenge.
Any other questions before we move to discussion? Okay. So if we could have a motion to approve BOA 2024-45 as conditioned by staff?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion? Any variance, or not variance, it's a bad word. Is there any disagreement with the conditions staff put on it? That's the construction, I agree. I was supposed to be glad to mess up.
And what about the roofing that you all mentioned? That's a concern.
Yeah, so when I think what we're saying, when we say attached, we're talking about the walls as well as the roof.
Would it be better than attached to say fully integrated? Is that a better way of saying that?
I mean,
like we want it to look like it
needs to look like it was all built all the way at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I do want to be considerate of the complaints, because if I saw that, I would have some complaints like, why is that allowed? Because it is pretty big, and the only way to make it right now would be to make it look like it was part of the house originally. And
So is it safer to say to move it back? I mean, I know he wants to keep the patio, but I mean, if he wants the garage.
because if you look at the site plan, if you don't shift it back at least enough to kind of be kind of centered on that ridge line of the existing building, it's going to be hard to even, I feel like it'll be even harder. Just, I mean, it's kind of like you got to sacrifice something to get something that's not approved.
That's why I was asking.
One thing we may not be able to see here is that the garage has a very small roof overhang, where the house has a larger overhang. It may actually be the walls lined up in the back. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
See how short it is, and where the roof on the house is a little bigger with that overhang? Because on this, it shows it it's not quite, but it's a lot closer to looking when you're looking at how it was drawn.
It's a line.
Yeah, without the overhangs. We need to, what if we use the fully integrated language and then also have the plan reviewed by the zoning administrator of how that's going to happen?
I mean, I think it needs to be reviewed, because I don't want that to be something that's done haphazardly, because we say it needs to be integrated and then they go integrate it, what it looks like. So I think it is something that needs to be reviewed once a plan is in place for how they actually.
So the garage must be fully integrated to the principal structure, and all plans for such integration shall be either approved by the zoning administrator or returned to the board, at the option of the zoning administrator. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, I think it might require one sheet of architectural drawings. Like, I think it might require somebody, a builder or somebody, actually drawing it up to see how it's going to work.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be something that's reviewed to make sure that it's done right.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I guess a bit of an observation. As we consider, is moving it out of the question? Are we beyond that?
No, I mean, we're in discussion. We can do any of that. I do, my thought on that, not that you were necessarily asking for that, is that I do feel bad because there's like no backyard whatsoever hardly on this house. It is tiny back there. So that would be my only.
Yeah.
I think if it's all integrated, it didn't bother me, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, what I would add to that is these metal garages aren't very rigid. I mean, moving it, if one corner of that building gets stuck, and I mean, that's it. You don't have to demolish it then. So I would try to stay away from moving the structure. I think the applicant mentioned to address the issue of drainage, maybe a gutter system that kind of helps with the water. Because I agree, if water's coming down off of that gable, as well as the gable of the house and the garage, that could cause, issue with foundation of the house, so much water's down there. But I think that there could be, as we talk about what this integration looks like, I would look at, some kind of well thought out guttering system. I would also think about the cladding at the front of the house, because that's our major issue, is how it looks from the front. So maybe if there was a concept that we can implement, or the applicant can implement, to connect the house to the garage, but leave the back open so that they can have access. So if, something gets stuck back there, or there needs to be some maintenance done, that they still have access. Just my thoughts.
Any other thoughts? All right. So, just to be clear, the motion and the second will be based on that revised condition 1. Okay.
And the addition of the requirement to be approved by DPDs. So we're asking, and you put that in the same one?
Yes, that's all in one statement. Yes, thank you, Ms. Hull. Mr. Secretary, will you give us a roll call, please?
Ms. Conrad.
I'm in agreement.
Mr. Love.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook.
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, it's been approved as conditioned. Thank you all for coming down.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Backus. Mr. Secretary, if you call our next case.
Item number 7, BOA 2024-65 at 1562 Valentine Avenue.
Okay, so if the applicant's present, if she'll come down to the front, we have some opposition on this. Thank y'all. Y'all just want to be ready when we get to you. And it looks like Ms. Hull is our star of the day.
Amy.
All right, so whenever you're ready, if you'll give us a staff report, please, Ms. Hull.
Yeah. Latanya Hull, DPD, presenting case BOA 2024-0065. The applicant is Christopher Roach. The location is 1562 Valentine Avenue, requesting variances to allow an attached accessory dwelling unit, to allow a side interior setback encroachment for the principal structure, and to allow an ADU greater than a third of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling structure. This subject property is located in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District. 132 notices were mailed for the project. The subject site is in yellow on your screen. The zoning for the area is residential, single family 6, and it has the historic district overlay. The uses are primarily residential with the exception of a small commercial section right across the street from the subject property. On your screen are pictures of the site. This particular picture at the top is looking northeastward along Valentine Avenue at the subject property. The one at the bottom is looking from the intersection of Valentine Avenue and Maury Street towards the subject property. There's an area view looking downward towards the subject property, and this is the attached dwelling unit here. And then we have another photo looking primarily, that one is looking at the principal structure, which is here, and an area view as well. And from the area view, this is the subject attached ADU. This is a site plan that was submitted. This is how it exists currently. This is the principal structure. This area here is the attached dwelling unit, and this is just a concrete pad in front. In conclusion, the applicant is requesting variances from paragraph 2.7.2D3 to allow an attached accessory unit, dwelling unit and subsection 3.61A to allow a side interior setback encroachment for the principal structure. The applicant purchased a residence with a non-conforming attached accessory dwelling unit and would like to legalize the structure so that it can continue to be utilized as an ADU. An ADU is allowed in the R6H district. However, the UDC prohibits ADUs from being a part of the principal structure. The UDC further requires that ADUs be at least 5 feet from any other structure on the property. Staff believes that approval of this request is appropriate as the structure was illegally modified before 2005 to include an addition to the rear of the property. So the ADU in question has been there since before 2005. 2005 was the latest I could go back to find information. That addition was later illegally converted to an ADU sometime between 2014 and 2019 and has been used as such since then, all prior to the owner's purchase in 2024. So going back to the history, it looked like it was an attached garage before. It had a single car garage entrance and a door. So there was something going on in there, but it was converted to the actual ADU somewhere between 2014 and 2019. 5 letters of opposition to this request were received, citing the illegality of the ADU, the perceived intention of the applicant to use the property as a multifamily dwelling due to the assignment of a separate address, and that the character of the ADU is inconsistent with the neighborhood and historic district. And just one commentary on that one, a separate address for ADUs is not uncommon. It's common to ask for a separate meter and a separate address for ADUs in the area. Staff finds that it would be an undue hardship to the applicant to require that ADU to be brought into compliance with the UDC at this time. However, staff has conditioned the approval to prevent short-term rental of the ADU and require any future alterations to the structure, interior or exterior, or the site to be subject to the approval of the Division of Planning and Development and the Memphis Landmarks Commission via the Certificate of Appropriateness process. So that'll keep any alterations in the future, making sure they're in line with the Historic District Design Guidelines. The granting of this variance will not cause substantial detriment to the public good, nor will it substantially impair the intent and purpose of an adopted plan or the UDC. Nor will it be injurious to the neighborhood or the general welfare, and it will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the UDC. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. Rental on less than a monthly basis is prohibited, and any exterior alterations must be in keeping with the Valentine Evergreen Historic District Design Guidelines and shall be submitted to the Memphis Landmarks Commission for review and approval through the Certificate of Appropriateness process. Any change or deviation from the site plan upon the determination of the zoning administrator shall be submitted to the Board of Adjustments for review and approval or administrative review and approval by the Division of Planning and Development. That concludes my presentation.
All right, are there any questions for Ms. Hull or staff?
I do have a quick question. Ms. Hall, on the requirement for separate meters for MLGW or anything, is that usually for detached ADUs versus attached ADUs?
So ADUs per the UDC are not allowed to be attached. Typically, there's at least 5 feet between the principal structure and the ADU. ADUs oftentimes will request a separate meter. MLGW will only give you a separate meter if you have a different address assigned. So that's why that address assignment is there.
And I guess my other question, when did it transition? Because it looks like it's all attached. So how do we designate it as an ADU and not just an extension of the house?
So it qualifies as an ADU. So it was way before 2025. It was attached at that time. So whatever was there that they put a garage and something, it looked like it was a space. According to some of the neighbors, they believe someone who owned it previously was operating some kind of a vehicle garage type of shop out of there or something of that nature. But between 2014 and 2019, it was modified so it was more of a dwelling space rather than a garage. So that's how it was attached. So when you know, an ADU is normally detached, they also will often request a separate meter in
And just, this is different than a duplex?
It is. So this qualifies as an ADU because of the size.
Sure.
So ADUs have different requirements than duplexes. Duplexes are usually larger.
Sure.
And so a typical duplex would not qualify as an ADU. But because of the size of this, it's so small.
What's the square footage? I interrupted you, I'm sorry, but it was fairly, I mean, it was small.
You updated it in, okay, so I believe it was,
574 square feet.
Okay.
Where the principal structure is approximately 1,594.
Gotcha, okay.
so just to clarify, now the applicant will speak to this, but one of the issues was because this was done illegally, we're not sure what the size of it is. So I asked the applicant to go measure it. So I'm gonna,
okay.
Yeah, but according to assessors, even the assessors website, the physical picture of the building was not accurate. So it's sort of one of those things you can't be clear.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Hall? All right, thank you. If the applicant will come forward, and I'll give your name and address, and I'll swear you in.
Chris Roach. I am at 1780 46th Avenue in Capitola, California.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you got?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Roach.
Thank you, Commissioner, and the board. As she pulls this up, I just wanted to start, and as the slides come up, I think it's important to acknowledge some of the comments and implications in the objection letters were around being a ghost investor, not being involved in the community, and the intent of kind of how we're paying to do these things for the house, which I thought was a little bizarre. I am a native Tennessean. I grew up here. I went to school here. My family's here. My wife and I are high school sweethearts from Tennessee. My partner is also a Tennessean, and we are heavily invested in the Volantine and Evergreen community. We have been invested in the community since 2018. We have two other properties, one on Volantine and then one actually right across the street at 895 Avalon. So if you could go forward, please move to the slide. We are also actively involved in all property operations. Our property management company's here with us, but we're actively involved in it. Like I said, we are owners of Avalon in 2187 Volantine, and the reason this came up on getting a second meter in the first place was when we bought the house. It looks like a single-family property, but when you go into it, it's connected, but there's no entrance into it. So it's two separate entrances into the single structure, right? So main house and then the second house, they have separate entrances. You would have to completely take out a structural wall to combine it into a single-family lot. We have we've invested a lot into this already to try to get it to where it is. What we did was we found the property when we were my father and I were renovating the 2187 property right down the street, and it looked like an interesting property, but it was in serious condition. We spent about a month and a half of diligence with MLGW before we finally were introduced to Ms. Hull. And from that time, we found out that there was a process that we needed to go through. And our intent has been from the beginning to do this completely above board and do everything by the letter of that we could do it by. Some of the other objections are not being compliant with the single family designation. I think it's important to point out that there's currently 4 multifamily listings in the Volantine Evergreen community, and there's 3 that have sold within the last 3 months. So if we could go to the next slide. The property we are the 5th owner since 2021. This property has been in significant swirl, starting with Mr. Vaughn, sold it for bought it for 42,000, it went to 155, and later in 21, the person that we bought it from, it went to 182,000, and obviously it's come down since then. There's a reason why this property has been in such issue. Is if you go ahead and tell, it was a disaster when we bought it. There's also comments in there that we installed a chain link fence on the property since we purchased it. This is purchased pictures. We did not do that, so that we plan on taking that down anyway if we go in. When we bought the property inside, there were squatters. It was completely vandalized, and there was continuous theft and a lot of unplanned costs. We had to have hazmat come in to clean out the property before we could even officially go in and see it after we purchased it. Feces, urine, all of it, completely disaster of a house. We have since we've since cleaned that out. But I mean, you can kind of see when we talk about the integrity of the neighborhood and how we want to make sure that these types of properties aren't in the Volunteer and Evergreen community, because I have properties there that I also care about. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And to go to the square footage, I did update it. My contractor went and measured it. So the main house is 1,673 square foot. The proposed ADU as it sits as today, and we're not going to make any modifications to it, is about 495 square feet, which puts the total livable square footage at 2,168. It may be a little bit bigger than that. As you can see in the proposed ADU, there's a closet. That closet was originally an outdoor storage. The previous owner, I don't know when it happened, that is now an accessory closet inside the main building. So that's just kind of the lookout of it. But as we've measured it, as our contractor, we should not exceed 29.9% of the main house's total square foot. The next, I just listed out the objections and some of the things that we talked about, and I wanted to make sure that we address those. Again, our intent is to do what's best for the neighborhood, to make this property livable, and to make sure that it's something that we can take advantage of, because we have purchased the property and there's not a lot we can do with it without a second meter other than leave 500 or 400 and X square feet completely vacant and then just have a single 1,500, 1,600 square foot house. I don't know what we would do with it, because it already has set up for a kitchen, it's set up for an ADU, and I'm not going to tear down a structural wall. So my concern is if we aren't able to get this variance granted, we could potentially have to become the sixth. There may be a seventh owner in 3 years. So the objections that we listed out, a lot of it is around the integrity of the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood, and I think it's important to address that. We saw the pictures of what the house looked like. Our primary goal here is to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the neighborhood and make sure that we make the best use of this property for value creation for our neighbors. There were some comments around not investing within city guidelines or community or consideration to the community interest. I fundamentally disagree with that and believe that our interest is solely aligned with making sure that the investments that are made in this property and the way that we go about it is done to make the neighborhood a better, safer place. We have owned properties in the neighborhood, like I said, since 2018. We have not increased our tenant's rent on the Avalon property for 5 years, knowing that she's underpaying rent by $500 a month, and we do that because we want to make sure that we're bringing affordable housing to a community where people need it, and we want to take care of the people that are taking care of our properties, and I think that that's the goal with this property as well. We can go on. The other ones. I mean, I think it's more of the same. A lot of the similar objections, and I just think that it's important to say that we're here in the community. We want to be here. We want to make this property better. We want to continue to invest in the community. We've put over $500,000 into the community over the last 5 years, and we would like to continue to do so if the neighborhood will have us. So, with that, I thank you for your time and open for any questions.
Time we have left. So you used all but 2:10 of your 10 minutes. So that'd give you 4 minutes of rebuttal, just so you know. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, none right now.
Thank you.
We're going to move to the opposition, and then we'll come back. So I have some opposition here. If y'all want to tell me who comes up, and you'll give your name and address for the record as you come up. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Stephanie Walker, 786 North McNeil Street.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Ms. Walker?
do.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to thank each of you for your service and your protection of our residents here in the city and properties and all. I was one who, and I tried to write it down because I know we only have a couple of minutes to speak, but this application did not really supply a floor plan or the actual plan of what the applicant plans to do with the property. There's no way to even consider what the electrical requirements are, and having a meter, a second meter on the house, which is not actually a dwelling, accessory dwelling anymore. But mainly I'm here because you're approving this variance, in my opinion, that this is a multi-unit property, and by you're bypassing the authority of the Land Use Board, that I believe that you're opening the door for many others. This is directly across the street from a club that we've had many problems with, but as you know, the city has enacted some blight and some code enforcement to get some of the things that will be here, or that they found here today that we should not find here tomorrow. I want to yield my time for others with me, with the opposition.
Okay. Well, before you leave, just a minute, are there any questions for Ms. Walker?
My only question or statement is that ADU is required in this zoning. It's just not allowed to be attached. So, that multifamily dwellings can happen within that zoning district.
So with this being attached, that's what
the hang-up is.
That's what the concern is for even the second meter and the actual intent of the property.
All right. You'll give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Karen Edwards. I live at 1887 South Rainbow Drive, Memphis 38107.
All right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Just some information specifically related to the UDC and this request for a variance. There's no use anywhere in the UDC that is labeled attached accessory dwelling unit. This simply just doesn't exist in the UDC. This UDC does not include a use named single family attached to family. This use is historically known as a duplex. We believe that this use is not an attached accessory dwelling, which does not exist. It is a single family attached to two-family dwelling, AKA a duplex. This use is not permitted in R6 zoning district, and it would require a variance. That's why we're here, to allow this use at this location. The findings of fact for a use variance require that none of the uses permitted on the property are practical due to unusual characteristics of the property. And just a couple of other things, that this property has in the past been a garage and a legal car repair shop. Residents reported it many times to blight and as a nuisance, and it was shut down. So I yield my time.
Are there any questions for Ms. Edwards? Check. Thank you. All right, ma'am, if you'll give your name and address for the record.
My name is Jennifer Sanders, and I live at 971 North Avalon for 47 years.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
This application violates the findings of facts. The BOA is supposed to allow in their review and vote on any variance. A variance should not be granted solely for the purpose of increasing probability or saving the applicant money. The applicant does not clearly say that it could be utilized more profitably or the applicant would save money. However, the applicant says it indirectly by warning any neighborhood opposition that if the application is not approved, the house will once again move to another owner. Therefore, I urge you commissioners to vote no on the BOA for our neighborhood.
Are there any questions from Ms. Sanders? Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Two more. You'll give your name and address for the record, please.
Catherine Larche, 1010 Hawthorne Street, 38107.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Larche.
The unusual characteristic claimed is that an addition has been built and expanded over years without any permits. According to the application, this illegal expansion was done by a succession of absentee owners over 20 plus years. Now, the latest absentee owner claims that he will save the property if he can get a variance to convert the home to a duplex as defined by the UDC. He says attached accessory dwelling, but there's no such use in the UDC. I would also like to add, I am 59 years old. I moved on Hawthorne Street when I was 6 years old, and I have lived there off and on over the years, in California twice, and in Texas, but that's been home for the most of my life. My parents bought that home. They both transitioned peacefully in that home. I've never heard Valentine be called Valentine. Thank you.
All right, got one more. This is Ms. Johnson. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Lucas, do we have another microphone by any chance?
Oh, yeah, the handheld.
Oh, there's a handheld. Could you help with that, maybe? Does that work? All right, we're going to try to get that to work. He's working on it, so.
That's 6.
All right, give us one second, Ms. Johnson. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Brett. All right, Ms. Johnson, if you'll give your name and address for the record for us.
My name is Mabel Johnson, and I live at 971 North Avalon.
Okay.
And today I'm 84 years old.
Okay.
And I moved there when I was 26 years old.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me swear you in, okay? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Nothing but the truth.
Okay.
So help
Go ahead,
me
Ms.
God.
Johnson.
And I'm here because I want to see the house remain as it was built for, a single family home. This is our neighborhood, and these is our homes. And all living here now is old senior citizens like ourselves. And we want to keep it that way. We want to live in peace and have peace in our homes until the Lord calls us to our heavenly home. And these people that's coming in, buying homes in our neighborhoods and leaving, they don't care who they putting in there. They never care and they never will. It's only about money. We going through a lot because of people that's buying these houses and putting any and everything in them. We don't have no peace. They come in our yards and just take over. They destroy what we have. Please keep them as a family home and help us to have peace in our home. What we work so hard for and can't have peace because this is a senior citizen era. That's what this is. And help us to feel safe and be safe because we don't have that feeling right now. Please keep that as a single home.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Are there any questions for Ms. Johnson? None. Okay, thank you very much. Do you have, we got, how much?
Yes.
We have time, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
go
thank
ahead.
you. Just as a group, we would like to request, make this one request from the Valentine Evergreen Community Association, that if today is deemed that it is approved, that the applicant be required or be asked to submit an application to Landmarks to improve the ADU's exterior. Right now, it's just a cinder block building with a flat roof. Thank you for.
Okay. That is alterations.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
The applicant did submit an application for a COA. However, it was withdrawn because it's not required. They're not doing any exterior alterations to the structure. When they start making alterations, that's when that's required.
That's when that triggers that.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why that condition is included, so that when they
Number
do,
two.
or if they do, then they'll have that. But right now, it was withdrawn because there was no alterations being considered.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hall. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in opposition? We still have a little time left. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move back to the applicant. You have 4 minutes and 10 seconds for any rebuttal if you have any.
Thank you, Commissioner and the board. First, I think it's important to address that. That was very, very good. Valentine, not Valentine. Apologies. Secondarily, I think it's important to address a few things. One, I'm not an absentee owner. I am an owner of a home that I don't live in, that I try to make as best as I possibly can for the people that live in this community. I've spent over 4 months of this year in Memphis. I've got 2 little kids. I've got a 9-year-old and I've got a 6-year-old that I've spent 4 months away from to make the houses in this community better. Now, that's my decision, but I just want to be very clear. I'm not an absentee owner. Secondarily, I think it's important to address how we think about tenants and the tenants that we allow on our properties. I have had the same tenant at 895 Valentine, I believe.
Mr. Rowe, would you mind facing the microphone?
Sorry.
Yeah, you really need to address us.
Yeah. This is new for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
So secondarily, I think it's important to address how we think about bringing tenants into our properties. We have a very rigid process in which our property management company goes through to make sure that we're bringing in the best possible tenants that are qualified, that financially that bring safety and qualified healthy style of life to the homes that we offer. We will absolutely do that with this one. The other one was around that we didn't have a floor plan and it was not known what the electrical requirements are. Unfortunately, we're not able to get the electrical requirements for the house until we get this approval because we have to split it, and we have sent the initial loads that we do know the initial load about that we need, but to get the full scope of it, we won't have that until we actually get in there. The property has not had electricity per MLGW, has not had electricity to the house since 2018. So, I mean, there's a lot that hasn't happened at that property. Outside of that, I really don't have anything to address other than we really appreciate your consideration for approving this variance request. And you have our commitment to doing this, everything by the letter of the book and what we can to continue to improve the community. So thank you for your time and appreciate you hearing us.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Roach?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
First, can you talk to us about what was your impression of the property when you first bought it? I mean, did you just know it was, because it's listed as a single family dwelling? Was that your impression when you bought it?
So before I bought it, my impression was, how can anyone let someone take over and squat in this home? The second impression I had was, okay, it's set up as two units, right? So it's set up as the main house and set up the other one. So my typical way of going about this is I go to Redfin or to my real estate site and I look at the proposed use and conditionally approved use. In the proposed use, it does say that ADUs are approved or are conditionally approved. And that cottages and side yard houses, so I've spent some time reading about what that was. And my assumption was that we would be able to get an approval based on those conditional uses that were in the Redfin description. The other thing that gave me confidence that it would be okay is that we do own 895 Avalon. And at Avalon, we already have 2 meters there, but it's a single family residence. I've spent the last 5 years trying to get MLGW to combine this into 1 meter, but they have not done it. They will not do it. And we've continued to pay MLGW over $5,000 in just sunk costs because they charge us for services that we don't use, and they won't combine the meters. So we found out that property was previously similar to what we've just purchased. So that was another kind of like reference point for us to say, okay, Redfin says it, the conditional use says it, R6, it looks like we should be okay. And that was really the kind of the train of thought that I went through to check the boxes and say, okay, is this okay to buy?
I see. And then second question is, it is set up as a single family home. Would what kind of complications would it cause for you to treat it as a single family home?
We'd have to remove a complete structural wall across the back of the house. We'd have to remove the kitchen that's in the ADU. So there's a kitchen in the ADU right now that's set up as a kitchen/living room, bathroom, and a bedroom area.
Or it could be, I guess it could be a home with 2 kitchens, right? One home with 2 kitchens.
I mean, is that, to me, that doesn't seem like a practical use. Not anything I've seen. In a 2,100 square foot house, it just doesn't seem like it would, that's the right use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sorry. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, thank you.
All right, so you're all ready to discuss? All right, so if we get a motion to approve BOA 2024-65 as conditioned by staff. Approve.
Second.
Okay. Do you have some questions or discussion points?
Yeah, I might be overlooking it because I have the UDC up now, but I'm pretty sure I'm overlooking it. When we're talking about ADU units, what does it specifically say they can't be attached? Or is that a R6 thing?
That is a code thing for all ADUs. And I do one point of information based on the floor plan the applicant had up there. I calculated the square footages. So they had the principal structure actually at 1,673 square feet, and the size of the attached ADU at 485 square feet. So the one request for the variance from 2.72D1B to allow an ADU greater than 1/3 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling structure is no longer necessary, so we can strike that.
It was smaller.
But that didn't include the closet that's now in the house, right?
We zoomed in very close to measure the closet.
Oh, okay, so you're good. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
So section 2.7.2, so the UDC says that accessory dwelling units have to be 5 feet from the principal structure and any other structure on the property. That's what the requirement is. That's what it says.
Okay.
It doesn't say it can't be attached specifically, but it just says that it has to be 5 feet away.
By definition, it wouldn't work. Any other thoughts on this one?
Are we calling this a duplex or?
They would say it's not a duplex just because there's such a, because I asked that, like, such a variance or
And the size.
difference in sizes, not a variance in sizes.
So we're calling that an ADU.
Yeah.
It happens to be attached.
I guess that's what I'm throwing
You know,
out.
in other cities where you have basements and stuff, people have, and they call them ADUs, but they're part of the structure, but it's like, separate entrance, like that, and it's not considered a duplex. It's like, well, I rent out my basement to somebody, but I still have 2 stories above it.
Right.
I just don't know if our UDC is thinking about that. We don't really have a
It's
lot of
not
that
updated.
issue here with basements and
Right.
stuff. Yeah,
Their basement is on the side, okay.
yeah. Most basements in Memphis, the few we have aren't very livable.
No,
Like they might be other places.
No.
Any other, I looked back, tried to, and looked back, the garage at least has been there, I think, since before 81. Like that structure's been there for a long time. And I looked yesterday, like I agree with staff, like at some point between like 14 and 19, the garage door was gone.
Okay.
Like and that wall got closed in, and so that makes sense, but the structure's been there for quite some time. I couldn't tell in the 1971 picture. It just was too grainy to tell if there was something there. It may have been there even in the 70s.
Right.
So the structure itself has been there, and I find having a structure that is like built out like this unique.
Right.
Unique.
Okay.
So as far as fitting that part of a variance request. Any other comments or discussion before we vote?
I mean, it's such a tough one, which it was about time. I mean, we were going to get a tough case, but most of the people that were objecting to it, their main objection would be there, even if this did fit the intent of an approved ADU.
Yeah.
Like their objections with having a ghost investor, or their objections of having multiple rent, that's allowed. The only reason this one is in question is because it's attached to the building. So if he was to, for whatever reason, knock this building completely down and build it up 5 feet away, they would still have an issue with it because of the complaints they gave, but it would then be legal. So that's kind of what makes it hard, because it's not an illegal use, but it's just the way it's attached, which the current owner did not build it that way. And it's been there for a while. So that's what makes it difficult, because he's not asking for anything that has not been in place already. So
I do like that we put the, cannot lease for less than a month. So it's not like in and out people all the time. At least they're there for a month, like travel nurses, stuff like that. You don't usually worry about those longer than month rentals. Any other comments before we vote? All right, Mr. Penzis, if you'll give us a roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Love,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the property in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. It's been approved. Thank y'all all for coming down. We appreciate y'all's comments and helping us think through this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but before the residents leave, can I share something with them? I understand this is not too far from where I lived for a long time, and I understand that neighborhood is transitioning. And as we look for more opportunities for affordable housing, sometimes that gets a little grainy, particular when it's someone that's not as familiar with the neighborhood as y'all are. But you still have some safety in local agencies. So you still have housing code enforcement, you still have construction code enforcement to rely on if there are issues. So just keep that in mind, that you do have some relief in local agencies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love.
Can I, one question, as far as an appeal, do we,
I would talk to Ms. Hall about any questions.
yeah, I'm
'cause
concerned about the assessment that he made for us. That was his assessment of us, not our assessment of the issue.
Yeah, we-
But our hearing on this is over.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
accepted
Yeah.
you, just not attached. So I just want to make sure you all understand that is,
Yeah.
that's our position.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Penz, if you'll call our last case.
BOA 2024-62 at 1360 Carr Avenue. And note, this is a petition to rehear.
Okay, so with a petition to rehear, we don't have to have any testimony at all from, we've all read the staff report. We have people here that are in opposition to the rehear, but we're not hearing the case. We're only hearing whether or not we would like to hear the case again, is what we're looking at. And so say that again. It would go back onto the calendar to be heard. And so the question before us as we get started is, do we, one, want any testimony? We can say yes or no to that. And then two, do we want the second question is, do we want to allow a petition to rehear? So from the people that read the staff or the letter or the petition.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a short staff presentation.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Good thing to
That'll be
keep in
great. Thank you,
mind
Ms.
while
Christian.
we're doing this,
Yeah.
if you want to hear testimony.
Okay. Right, yeah, she's like, I've been waiting. I'm talking.
Good afternoon, I'm Chloe Christian with DPD. I'll be giving a very brief presentation on docket number BOA 2024-0062. The representative is present today, William Falk, and the applicant as well. The location is at 1360 Carr Avenue, and this is a request for a rehearing of the board's rejection of a use variance to allow a large home during its meeting held last month. So as I said, the subject property is at 1360 Carr. It's in the Central Gardens Historic District. The land use designation is single family currently. Here are some photos of the site. Here are the current conditions on the left-hand side and the proposed site plan on the right-hand side. I'll just go through these. It was found to be consistent with the 3.0 plan. And a brief conclusion of the case was that the home was originally built in 1906 as a single-family home per the Sanborn map. But at some point between 1952 and 2018, there was a conversion by a previous owner into multiple dwelling units, but it's unclear when that occurred. And it likely happened illegally. So the conversion to a large home was not a permitted use when it did occur. However, it has existed without any detriment to the public good for quite some time. And it was not until a change in ownership when this use issue was noticed. And so this is a request for a rehearing of this case to be held potentially on September 25th. They're governed by Article 6 of the Rules of Procedure for the Board of Adjustment. And as a reminder, this item was rejected last month by this body, and it failed by a vote of 2 to 3, as in there were 2 votes for no and 3 votes for yes. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from Ms. Christian? Mr. Penzis?
Just for clarity, every vote by the board requires 5 votes to pass, which is why it failed, even though you see 3 to 2. Think, oh, well, why was that not approved? And also for clarity, I think Tim already said this, or Mr. Rainey already said this, but this petition for rehearing also requires 5 votes to pass.
Right, so.
Point of clarity, though, and I'm just reading the memo from council, and it says there were 4 to 1, or was it 3 to 2?
That's an error.
We hadn't published the minutes at that point, and if you remember at last meeting, there was some confusion about the vote that we had discussed, but it was 3 votes in favor, 2 votes in opposition.
Okay. Yeah. Have y'all had a chance to read the petition, and does anybody want to hear testimony, or do y'all want to just discuss whether we hear testimony?
It was going to fail last time regardless, right? Because, I mean, one person voted. And we didn't have the numbers last time, right?
Here's, I was one of the no votes, but I absolutely hate it when we have 5 people and it makes everything be unanimous. I don't think I know it was great for the neighbors, but I just don't think it's fair for the applicant when they have to get 100%. And so I hate it when, like, for whatever reason, we couldn't get the full complement of people to give their thoughts on it.
So we're discussing whether or not we either hear it at all or whether we hear testimony.
Let's figure out if we need testimony first, and then we can decide. I would just say I'm in favor of rehearing, not because I think the facts changed for me from what he said, but I don't think it's fair when we don't have more people.
I agree, because last meeting, it's funny because I wasn't fully aware of the minimum.
Yeah.
So once I found that out, I was like, oh, okay. Well, no matter what we said, as long as one person was adamant about it. So I think just to be fair for him, you know, if we're gonna have a good count that week, I guess that's the biggest thing. Like we can rehear it, and even when we rehear it, somebody could be absent, or a few people could be absent. But if we do have a full complement of the board, it would be in our interest to make sure that so yeah, I agree.
I think he gets another bite at the apple. Yeah. We do have some new members, you know, to even hear more of the, you know, different points of view of reviewing the facts of the case. Not say it'll deter their votes any other way, but we do have 2 new members that could weigh in.
Yeah, and I would add, it's already been said, but just to add to it, I didn't realize until the meeting was over last time as I was walking out. I knew that it took 5 votes for any motion to pass or any application to be approved. I just didn't think about it till after the meeting was over as I was walking out of here. So so there was confusion there. It was unfortunate for any applicant to show up on that day when we had 5, because it made it harder for them to get their application approved than on other weeks. So I would be for hearing it again and next month. Now, one more thing, just for clarity, if we talk about hearing testimony today, that's only about whether we should have the hearing next month, right?
Right.
Sounds like we don't need to hear, it sounds like most of us are in agreement, we don't need to hear testimony.
But you want to make a motion to approve the application or petition for